The polished Oxford shoe connected with Gwen's hip bone before her champagne flute even hit the floor. The crack echoed through the midnight Christmas ball, louder than the orchestra, louder than the murmur of Manhattan's elite, louder than her own gasp as she went down hard against the marble. Crystal ornaments from the designer Christmas tree shattered around her like frozen tears, her gold silk gown tearing as she crashed into the display stand, her elbow splitting open against the metal edge. For 3 seconds, the entire ballroom held its breath. Gwen looked up from the polished floor, blood trickling warm down her forearm, at the man standing over her, Julian Thorne, her ex. The man who'd stolen her designs, her savings, her future 5 years ago. The man who'd left her pregnant and homeless in the coldest winter New York had seen in decades. "Watch where you're going, you clumsy trash," Julian snarled, adjusting his cufflinks like he'd just swatted a fly instead of kicking a woman to the ground. His eyes swept over her with contempt, no recognition in them at all. He had no idea who she was anymore. No idea that the desperate woman who'd begged him not to leave, who'd cried in that freezing shelter with $17 and a baby dying inside her, was gone. No idea about the 20-carat diamond hidden beneath her glove, the penthouse in Tribeca she'd left that evening, or the offshore accounts with her name attached. No idea about the architectural empire she'd built from ash and rage. And Julian Thorne definitely had no idea about the man whose last name was now legally hers. The man whose security team was currently closing in from every corner of the ballroom. The man whose phone was vibrating in her beaded clutch right now. Jaime Leone. Her husband. The Wolf of Wall Street's underbelly. New York's most dangerous man. Gwen's trembling fingers found her phone. She accepted the call. Jamie's voice came through, deadly calm, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as dangerous. "Tesoro, are you hurt?" She watched the first flicker of uncertainty cross Julian's face as he noticed the men in black suits weren't hotel security. As he noticed they were all looking at her, waiting. "Jaime," she whispered. "Who touched you?" Julian had just kicked the wrong woman. And in approximately 8 seconds, when Jaime Leone stepped out of the shadows to answer the call in person, Julian Thorne was going to learn that some debts can only be paid in blood, concrete, and the complete destruction of everything he'd ever built. But he didn't know it yet. Right now, in this crystalline moment of ignorance, he still thought she was nothing. That was about to change. Before we watch Julian's world burn, let me tell you something important. This is a story about resurrection. About a woman who lost everything: her career, her child, her will to live, and clawed her way back from the grave wearing diamonds and fury. This is also a Christmas story. So before we dive into this journey of love, vengeance, and redemption, I want to wish you a blessed and magical holiday season. May your days be filled with the kind of love that protects, the kind of strength that rebuilds, and the kind of justice that restores. Now do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because what happens next is going to be unforgettable. Let's rewind 14 hours. Let me show you the woman Julian Thorne thought he destroyed. Gwen had stood in their walk-in closet that morning, running her fingers over fabrics that cost more than her first year of architecture school. Silk from Milan, cashmere from Scotland, a rainbow of designer labels that still felt like playing dress-up in someone else's life. She chose the gold dress. Simple, elegant, nothing too flashy. Old habits from harder times died slowly. "You're doing it again!" Jamie's voice came from the doorway, already dressed in the 3-piece Tom Ford suit that made him look like a beautiful predator in expensive wool. His dark hair was styled back, revealing the scar along his left temple, a reminder that he'd earned his throne in blood, not boardrooms. Doing what? She turned, fastening pearl earrings that had belonged to his grandmother. "Choosing the least expensive thing in your closet." He crossed to her, his presence filling the space like smoke, suffocating and essential all at once. His hands found her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "You're married to a man who owns half of New York's underground economy. Stop shopping in your closet like you're still counting pennies." She laughed, the sound lighter than she felt. "I like simple things. I like spoiling you." He pressed his lips to the curve of her neck, the gesture possessive and tender in equal measure. "Humor me. You humor me by loving me exactly as I am." His expression softened in that way it only did for her. The wolf becoming a man. Always, Tessero. Always. But then something shifted. His jaw tightened, his eyes going to the invitation on her vanity. The midnight Christmas ball. The award ceremony for the Thorn Tower. You don't have to go, he said quietly. I do. She turned in his arms, cupping his face. I need to see it. I need to see him get his award for my building, and know that I survived him, that I won. You didn't just survive him, Gwen. You built an empire while he was stealing credit for one building. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But if you're going into that ballroom, you're taking protection, non-negotiable. Jamie, I don't need bodyguards to watch a man accept an award. He put you in a homeless shelter. The words came out flat. Final. He's the reason you lost our first child. You don't go anywhere near Julian Thorne without my men surrounding you. This isn't a request. There it was, the Mafia boss. The man who'd built his empire on absolute control and ruthless love. She could have fought him. But she recognized the fear beneath his command. Jaime Leone, the man who'd made senators weep and CEOs disappear, was terrified of losing her. Okay, she whispered. Marco and Luca can come. The tension left his shoulders. He checked his watch, solid platinum, minimalist, obscenely expensive. I have a meeting with the Gambino family. I'll be done by 7. We have dinner reservations at 8. Where? That dangerous smile returned, the one that still made her breath catch. It's a surprise. Wear this dress. I haven't been able to stop thinking about taking it off you since you bought it. Heat flooded her face even as she smiled. You're insatiable. Only for you, Bella. Only ever for you. He kissed her then, deep and claiming. The kind of kiss that erased the world outside their bedroom. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathing hard. Be safe, he murmured against her lips. Always. He left her there, surrounded by luxury she still couldn't quite believe was hers, preparing for a night that would change everything. If only she'd known that Julian Thorne's polished shoe was waiting for her in 8 hours. If only she'd known that this time, when she hit the ground, she wouldn't be getting up alone. This time, she'd be getting up with an army. Julian's laugh came out strangled, like his vocal cords were already trying to retreat from the danger his brain hadn't yet registered. He looked at Jaime, really looked at him, and Gwen watched the exact moment recognition flickered across his features. Not of the man, but of the aura. The kind of power that didn't need introduction because it preceded reputation. Wife? Julian's voice cracked on the word. He gestured toward Gwen with trembling fingers, trying to salvage control he'd already lost. This is Gwen. Gwen Williams. She's nobody. A squatter. A failed intern who couldn't hack it in the real world. Jaime didn't respond. He simply stood there, 6 feet 3 inches of controlled violence in a bespoke suit, his hand still wrapped around Gwen's phone. The screen glowed between them. His name illuminated like a verdict. Gwen felt his eyes on her before she looked up, those dark Italian eyes that had seen her at her absolute worst, crying in the bathtub at 3 a.m., screaming through nightmares about freezing shelters, and had never once looked away. They swept over her now, cataloging every detail. The torn shoulder of her gown, the blood trickling down her forearm, the way she held her left side where Julian's shoe had connected. Something shifted in his expression. Something deadly. Get up, Tesoro, he said quietly, extending his hand. She took it. His palm was warm, calloused from the guns he preferred to handle personally, steady as bedrock. He pulled her to her feet with such gentleness that it made her throat tight. Then his thumb brushed over her cheekbone, a gesture so intimate, so publicly possessive, that several people gasped. Julian was still talking, his voice rising with desperation. I don't know what she told you, but she's lying. She's always been a liar, a manipulator. She probably seduced you, didn't she? That's what she does. Finds desperate men and... Desperate? Jaime's voice cut through Julian's rambling like a knife through silk. He still hadn't raised his voice. Somehow that made it worse. You think I look desperate to you? Julian opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes darted around the ballroom, searching for allies, for security, for anyone who could extract him from this situation. That's when he noticed them. The men in black suits weren't hotel security. They wore the same understated elegance as Jaime Tom Ford, Ermenegildo Zegna, Brioni, but underneath the designer labels was muscle built from violence, not gyms. And every single one of them was looking at Julian like he was already dead. Security! Julian's voice pitched high. He snapped his fingers at the nearest man in black. Security! I need you to escort this woman out. She's trespassing. She's… The man didn't move, didn't even blink. Julian tried again, addressing another guard. I said, remove her. Are you deaf? I'm Julian Thorne. I'm receiving an award tonight. This is my event. Actually, Jaime said, and now there was something almost pleasant in his tone, which made Gwen's pulse quicken because she knew what that meant. It's my event. I didn't just buy a ticket, Julian. I bought the venue. For the evening. The hotel. The security firm contracting the guards. The catering company serving your champagne, all mine. You've been standing in my cage for the last 45 minutes, and you didn't even know it. The color drained from Julian's face so fast Gwen thought he might faint. The security detail you've been ordering around, Jamie continued, his hand settling possessively on the small of Gwen's back. Those are my men. Caporgimes, soldatos, associates. The Italian family doesn't wear badges, Julian. We wear Armani. You're lying. But Julian's voice had no conviction left in it. Jamie smiled. It was the smile Gwen had seen him wear during business negotiations that ended with someone signing over their entire operation. Marco. One of the men stepped forward. He was older than the others, silver threading through his dark hair, a scar running down his left jaw. He inclined his head respectfully toward Gwen. Donna. Gwen's breath caught. Donna. The title Jamie's family had given her when they married. Shadow Donna, they called her in whispers, because she didn't command with violence but with strategy, with the kind of intelligence that dismantled empires from the inside out. Show Signor Thorne the guest list, Jaime said. Marco produced a tablet. He turned it toward Julian, and Gwen watched her ex's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally, creeping horror. You see that name? Jamie's voice was almost gentle now, the kind of gentle that preceded executions. The angel investor, the one who's been funding your failing company for the last 6 months. The one who promised to meet you here tonight to discuss saving your firm from bankruptcy. Julian's hand shook as he scrolled through the document. This says the investor is Leone Holdings, Jaime finished. That's me, Julian. I've been buying up your debt, your contracts, your reputation, piece by piece. And tonight I was going to hand the entire company to my wife as an early birthday present. His fingers flexed against Gwen's spine. But then you put your hands on her. The ballroom had gone so quiet Gwen could hear the crystal chandeliers trembling overhead. Every eye was fixed on them socialites, politicians, businessmen who'd spent the evening networking, all frozen in a tableau of expensive clothing and expensive horror. Julian's girlfriend Gwen couldn't remember her name. Some heiress with more money than sense grabbed his arm. Julian, what is he talking about? What debt? He shook her off roughly. Shut up, Isabella. Don't speak to her like that. Gwen's voice surprised her with its steadiness. She stepped forward, out of Jamie's protective hold, and Julian actually flinched. You don't get to treat another woman the way you treated me. Not while I'm standing here. Gwen. Julian's voice broke on her name. Gwen, please. I didn't know. I didn't recognize you. You look so different. And you thought I was still the desperate girl you threw away. She felt Jamie's presence behind her, a dark shadow of retribution, but she didn't need him to fight this battle. Not this part. You thought I was still broken, still crying, still begging for scraps from your table. I made a mistake, Julian said quickly, his eyes darting between Gwen and Jamie. I was young. We were both young. But we can fix this. We can… Fix this? Gwen's laugh was sharp enough to cut. You stole my designs. You stole my savings. You left me pregnant and homeless in January, in New York, in the coldest winter in 30 years. And you think an apology can fix that? I didn't know you were pregnant. I told you. The words ripped out of her before she could stop them. "I told you the morning you left. You said—" Her voice cracked, and she hated herself for it. Hated that he could still make her feel this after 5 years of therapy, of rebuilding, of learning to breathe again. "You said you didn't care. That it wasn't your problem." Silence. The kind of silence that preceded violence. Then Jaime's hand was on her waist again, pulling her back against his chest, his other hand coming up to cup her jaw. "Breathe, Bella," he murmured in Italian, his lips against her temple. "Breathe. I have him." She breathed, drew in the sandalwood and gun oil scent of him, let it steady her. When she opened her eyes, Julian was staring at them with naked jealousy, at the way Jamie held her, at the diamond on her finger now visible where she had peeled off her ruined glove 20 carats. Flawless, set in platinum and engraved with words in Italian that translated to "until death and beyond." "That's a Leone family ring," someone whispered in the crowd. "She's actually his wife," another voice confirmed. Julian swallowed hard. "The baby did you? Was there really?" "There was really a baby." Gwen's voice was steel now. "Your son. He died because I didn't have money for food, because I was sleeping in a shelter where the heat didn't work, because the stress of losing everything, my career, my home, my future, caused my body to reject the pregnancy." She paused, let the words sink in. "His name was going to be Thomas, after my father." Julian's knees buckled. He caught himself on a nearby table, champagne flutes toppling, crystal shattering against marble. Isabella made a small, horrified sound. "You never told me you had a child." "I didn't," Julian said quickly. "It wasn't viable. She's exaggerating. I have the medical records," Gwen interrupted. "From Bellevue. From the night I miscarried. They're date-stamped 2 weeks after you cleaned out our joint account. And they have your name listed as the father, because I was still stupid enough to think you might come back." Jaime's arms tightened around her. She felt the tension coiling through his body, the barely leashed violence. He was letting her speak, letting her have this moment, but his patience had limits, and Julian was rapidly approaching them. "Signora Leone," Marco said quietly, "would you like us to remove Signor Thorne?" She almost said yes, almost let them drag Julian out of the ballroom, end this confrontation, before it destroyed what little composure she had left. But then she thought about the blueprints, about the building that bore Julian's name but held her soul in every line, every calculation, every innovative solution to impossible problems, about the award he was supposed to accept tonight for work he didn't do. "No," she said clearly. "I want everyone here to know exactly who Julian Thorne is before we remove him." Jaime's chest rumbled with approval against her back. "Marco, the presentation." Marco nodded. He moved toward the stage, toward the massive projector screen that had been set up to display Julian's achievements, his award acceptance speech, his rise to architectural stardom. Julian watched him go, confusion and fear warring on his face. "What are you doing? What presentation?" Gwen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You wanted the spotlight tonight, Julian. Let's make sure you get it." The lights dimmed. The murmur of the crowd swelled and then died as the projector screen flickered to life. Julian stood in the center of the ballroom, his tuxedo rumpled, his face pale, looking like a man watching his execution in real time. The first image that appeared wasn't the professional photograph of the Thorne Tower that was supposed to open his award presentation. It was a blueprint, hand-drawn, detailed, dated 5 years earlier. And in the bottom right corner, in handwriting that Gwen had worked hard to make confident again after Julian destroyed it, was a signature. Gwen Williams, lead architect. The gasp from the crowd was collective, visceral. "That's," Julian started, but his voice died when the next slide appeared. Then another, then another. Each one a piece of the Thorne Tower's design. Each one dated before Julian had even started his firm. Each one signed by Gwen. "The Thorne Tower," Gwen said, her voice carrying through the silent ballroom with the kind of authority she'd earned in boardrooms and back rooms, in the places where deals were made and enemies were buried, "was conceived as my thesis project at Columbia. It was revolutionary not because of its height, but because of its sustainable design. The energy recapture system in the HVAC, the rainwater filtration, the structural innovations that allow it to withstand Category 5 hurricane winds without swaying more than 3 inches at the top. She stepped away from Jaime, moved to the center of the floor. Her gold dress caught the light from the projector, turning her into something gilded and dangerous. I spent 3 years developing those systems, she continued. 3 years of modeling, testing, failing, rebuilding. And when I finally had something viable, something that could change how we think about skyscraper sustainability, I made the mistake of sharing it with my partner, my fiancé, the man I trusted with everything. Julian tried to speak. Gwen, that's not your twisting. The man who stole my designs the day before our lease ended. Her voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. Who copied every file from my laptop while I was sleeping. Who used my own passwords to access my cloud storage, my email, my entire professional portfolio, and who then reported me to the university for plagiarism. The crowd's energy shifted. Gwen could feel it, the way she'd learned to read rooms during her time as Jamie's wife, as the strategist behind his empire. They were turning against Julian, slowly, like a tide. That's a lie. Julian's voice cracked with desperation. She was my intern. The designs were collaborative. I was the licensed architect. She was just a student helping with drafting. Marco clicked to the next slide. It was an email chain, from Julian's account to a patent attorney, dated 4 days before he'd left Gwen. The subject line read, Rush filing, building design patent, Sole authorship. The attached document was Gwen's thesis, word for word, with her name deleted and his inserted. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Julian, I can explain. The foundation is cracking. Gwen's voice cut through his excuses like a scalpel. She moved closer to him, her heels clicking against marble, and Julian actually stepped back. Floor 47, western corner. The structural support you installed using my designs, did you even read the specifications? Or did you just hand them to your engineers and hope for the best? His silence was answer enough. I designed that building to be built in a specific sequence. Gwen continued, circling him now, a predator toying with prey. The support columns had to cure for 48 hours before the next level could be poured. The steel reinforcement had to be treated with a specific polymer to prevent thermal expansion. Every detail mattered, Julian. And you rushed it, because you didn't understand the why behind the how. The building is fine, he protested weakly. It passed inspection. It's been standing for 3 years without catastrophic failure, Gwen interrupted. But the microfractures in the foundation are spreading. In 5 years, maybe 10, that tower is going to need hundreds of millions in structural repairs. And when the city investigates why, they're going to find your shortcuts, your code violations, your complete disregard for the safety protocols I spent 3 years perfecting. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, the eyes he'd once claimed to love. You stole the shell, Julian, but you couldn't steal the soul, and that's why your masterpiece is dying from the inside out. Julian looked around wildly, searching for support. His father sat in the front row, stone-faced. Isabella had moved away from him, her expression revolted. The event coordinator was pale, his hand on his phone probably calling the hotel's legal team. These are doctored, Julian said, pointing at the screen with a shaking hand. The dates are fake. She's doing this because I left her, because she can't handle rejection. This is revenge, pure and simple. Revenge? Jaime's voice rolled through the ballroom like thunder. He'd been quiet, letting Gwen have her moment. But there were limits to his patience. He moved to stand beside her, his hand claiming her waist with possessive finality. You think my wife needs revenge? You think she hasn't already won? He gestured to the room. To the chandeliers dripping crystal, to the Manhattan elite in their designer labels, to the power and money condensed into one ballroom. Look around, Julian. She's married to me. She has more money than you'll see in 10 lifetimes. She's designed buildings in 3 countries, won awards under her own name, built a reputation that makes firms compete for her signature on their projects. What exactly does she need from you? Then why is she doing this? Julian's voice was desperate now, childlike. Why drag me through this if she's so successful? Gwen felt Jaime's hand tighten on her waist. A warning, a question. She could stop this now. Walk away. Let him disappear into obscurity without the public humiliation. That's what the old Gwen would have done. The girl who apologized for existing, who made herself small to avoid conflict, but that girl had died in a homeless shelter 5 years ago. The woman who'd risen from those ashes didn't apologize for taking up space. Because you need to understand something, she said quietly. When you left me, you didn't just break my heart. You destroyed my career, my reputation. The university blacklisted me because of your plagiarism report. No firm would hire me because you spread rumors that I was unstable, vindictive, a lawsuit waiting to happen. I spent 2 years working cash jobs, waitressing, cleaning houses, just trying to survive. Her voice didn't shake. That was important. She'd promised herself it wouldn't shake. And in those 2 years, I thought about you every single day. About what you took from me. About the baby I lost because of you. About the future I'd planned that you burned to the ground. She paused, let the words breathe. So yes, Julian, this is revenge. But not for breaking my heart. For stealing my life's work and then trying to convince the world I was the thief. The projector screen changed again. This time it showed a recording. Grainy, shot from a security camera, but the audio was crystal clear. Julian's voice, recorded in what looked like a bar, talking to someone off-screen. The tower? Please. My ex-girlfriend did most of the actual design work. Brilliant girl, terrible instincts. She actually thought I was going to marry her and give her credit. Can you imagine? Sharing a billion-dollar project with some nobody from Brooklyn? The other voice, male, incredulous. You stole her work? Julian, laughing. Stole? I leveraged an asset. She wasn't going to do anything with it. No license, no connections, no business sense. I took raw talent and made it something. That's not theft. That's entrepreneurship. The recording ended. The ballroom exploded into chaos. Julian's face had gone from pale to gray. That was private. That was you can't record people without their knowledge. It's illegal. It's perfectly legal in New York, Marco said calmly. When one party consents to the recording. And the gentleman you were speaking to? He works for me. Has for 3 years. Julian turned on him, betrayal and rage twisting his features. You set me up? I prepared the ground, Jaime corrected. His voice was conversational, almost friendly, which made it infinitely more terrifying. 5 years ago, your actions destroyed my wife's life. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't care? I didn't know she was your wife 5 years ago. No, Jaime agreed. 5 years ago she was homeless. Pregnant with a baby she would lose because you'd left her with nothing. 5 years ago, she was alone in a city that had turned its back on her because you'd poisoned every professional well she might have drawn from. His hand moved from Gwen's waist to her shoulder, steadying. 3 years ago, she walked into my office building looking for work as a cleaning person. She was brilliant, broken, and barely surviving, and I saw what you'd tried to destroy. Gwen felt her throat tighten. She knew this story, had lived it, but hearing Jaime tell it, hearing the emotion he usually kept locked behind Italian stoicism, it made her eyes burn. I hired her as a junior architect, Jaime continued. Gave her projects you would have killed for. Watched her rebuild herself into the woman she was always meant to be. And when she told me what you'd done, when she finally trusted me enough to show me the scars you'd left, his voice went soft, deadly. I started building your cage. Julian's legs gave out. He hit the floor hard, marble unforgiving against his knees. Please, he whispered. Please, I'll give it back. The building, the patent, all of it. Just please. You can't give back what you never truly owned. Gwen crouched down, bringing herself to his eye level. Her dress pooled around her like molten gold, and she looked every inch the queen she'd become. But you're right about one thing. You are going to give me something tonight." She gestured to Marco. He handed her a folder. Leather, expensive, stamped with the Leone family crest. "This is the patent for the Thorn Tower's sustainable systems," she said, opening it. "As of 3 hours ago, it's been transferred to my name. The university reviewed the evidence, all of it, and reversed your claim. They've also reinstated me with full honors and a formal apology." Julian stared at the documents like they were a death sentence. "This," she continued, pulling out another page, "is the retraction you're going to issue tonight. It states that the design was collaborative, but the innovative systems were solely my work. It recommends that future citations credit Gwen Leone Williams as the primary architect." "I'll be ruined," he whispered. "Yes," she agreed simply. "You will, but you'll be alive, which is more than you deserve." She stood, towering over him in her heels, and her rage and her hard-won power. "Sign it. And if I don't?" The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Jaime moved, fast and fluid, his hand suddenly around Julian's throat. Not choking, just holding, a reminder of how fragile the human body was when faced with someone who'd built an empire on violence. "Then we move to Plan B," Jamie said pleasantly, "which involves the construction site of your tower's extension, wet concrete, and a conversation about what happens to men who hurt my wife. Your choice, Julian. Dignity or agony? I'm comfortable with either." Julian's hand shook as he reached for the pen Marco offered. He signed his name 3 times, each signature more illegible than the last, each one a piece of his reputation crumbling to dust. When he finished, Gwen took the papers back. She didn't say thank you, didn't gloat, just stood there, victorious and exhausted and finally free. "One more thing," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "We were lovers. You're right about that. I loved you with everything I had. And you used that love as a weapon. You manipulated it, exploited it, destroyed it. So let me be very clear about something." She leaned down, her lips close to his ear, her words for him alone. "I don't love you anymore. I don't even hate you. You're nothing to me now. And that's the real punishment. Knowing that the woman you threw away became someone so far beyond your reach that you're not even an afterthought." She straightened, took Jamie's offered hand, started to walk away. Julian's voice stopped her. "You're just bitter I left." She turned back, one last time. "No, Julian. I'm grateful, because if you hadn't destroyed me, I never would have become this. I never would have realized that I didn't need you, that I was always enough on my own." She smiled, and it was genuine, radiant. "So thank you for being exactly who you are, for showing me exactly what I needed to become." Then she let Jaime lead her through the crowd, through the whispers and stares, through the ballroom doors and into the hotel corridor where the air felt clean again. The moment they were alone, she started shaking. All the adrenaline, all the carefully controlled rage, flooding out of her in tremors she couldn't stop. Jaime caught her before her knees gave out, pulled her against his chest, let her breathe through it. "I've got you," he murmured in Italian, his lips against her hair. "Tesoro, I've got you. You were magnificent. You destroyed him with nothing but the truth." "He didn't recognize me," she whispered against his shirt, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. 5 years. I carried his child. I loved him. And he looked right through me. Because you're beyond his comprehension now." Jaime's hand cupped the back of her head, protective, possessive. "He saw you as less than, as something to use and discard. He can't see greatness because he's never possessed it himself." She laughed, watery and broken. "Is this what winning feels like? You tell me, Bella." She pulled back enough to look at him. At the man who'd found her broken and helped her forge herself into something unbreakable. Who'd given her the resources to fight back, but never fought her battles for her. Who looked at her like she was the most dangerous thing in any room, and loved her more for it. "It feels," she said slowly, "like I can finally breathe." His smile was fierce, proud. "Then breathe, my love. Breathe and know that no one will ever make you feel small again. But even as he said it, even as she believed it, she knew this wasn't over. Julian wouldn't go quietly. Men like him never did. They clawed and fought and tried to drag everyone down with them. She just didn't know yet how far he'd be willing to fall. They made it 3 steps back toward the ballroom before Julian's voice cut through the corridor like breaking glass. "You want to talk about the past, Gwen? Let's talk about it." She froze, felt Jamie's arm steel around her waist. "Let him go," she said quietly. "Let him dig his own grave." Jaime's jaw was tight, but he nodded. They turned back. Julian stood in the ballroom doorway, his father and Isabella behind him, along with half the gala's guests spilling into the corridor. An audience for his destruction. Perfect. "You want everyone to think I'm the monster?" Julian's face was flushed, his carefully styled hair falling across his forehead, his designer tuxedo rumpled and stained. He looked manic, desperate. "Let's tell them the whole story. Let's tell them how you tried to trap me with a pregnancy." The corridor went silent. Gwen felt Jamie's entire body tense behind her, his stillness the kind that preceded extreme violence. She put her hand over his, held him in place. "Let him talk. I was 27 years old," Julian continued, his voice rising with each word. "Building a career. I was clear from the beginning that I didn't want children. But you." He pointed at her, his finger shaking. "You stopped taking your birth control without telling me. You deliberately got pregnant thinking it would force me to marry you." Isabella made a small, shocked sound. Several people in the crowd murmured. The energy shifted, uncertainty creeping in. Had Gwen manipulated him? Was this a case of competing narratives? He said, she said, impossible to judge? Gwen smiled. It was a terrible smile, the kind that made Marco cross himself. "You're right," she said clearly. "I did stop taking my birth control." Julian's face lit up with vindication. "See? She admits it. She trapped me. I stopped taking it because we'd had a conversation about starting a family. 3 conversations, actually. I have the texts." She looked at Marco. He nodded, already pulling them up on the tablet. "You told me you wanted to be a father, that we should start trying after the new year, that you'd already looked into preschools in Manhattan." The texts appeared on the tablet Marco held up, date stamped. Screenshot after screenshot of Julian waxing poetic about fatherhood, about legacy, about raising children who would carry on his architectural vision. Julian's face went from flushed to ashen. "Those are out of context." "They're dated," Gwen said. "December 10th through December 28th. We started trying for a baby on December 30th. I found out I was pregnant on January 15th. You left me on January 17th. She paused. 2 days after I told you. I left because you were unstable." His voice pitched higher, cracking. "You were obsessed with the baby. You wanted to get married immediately. You were talking about names, about nurseries, about the future we'd planned together." Her voice was soft, deadly. "The one you encouraged me to dream about? The apartment we were supposed to move into together? The life you promised me?" "I changed my mind," Julian exploded. "Is that a crime? I realized I wasn't ready. I realized I'd made a mistake." "People are allowed to change their minds, Gwen." "They are," she agreed. "But changing your mind doesn't give you the right to steal someone's life savings when you go. It doesn't give you the right to report them for plagiarism to destroy their career. It doesn't give you the right to spread rumors that they're mentally unstable to ensure no one will hire them." She took a step toward him. "And it definitely doesn't give you the right to disappear without a word when you know they're pregnant and alone. I didn't know how bad it was for you. You knew." Her voice cracked, the first real break in her composure. "You knew because I called you. 47 times. I left voicemails begging you to just talk to me. I sent emails. I sent texts. I showed up at your new apartment, the one you'd rented without telling me, and you called the police on me." The crowd was dead silent now. Even the socialites who'd been whispering behind their hands had gone still. "I was 6 weeks pregnant," Gwen continued, her voice steady again, iron and ice. "Sleeping in a shelter because I couldn't afford first and last month's rent anywhere. Working day shifts at a diner because no architecture firm would touch me after you destroyed my reputation. And I was still trying to reach you. Still hoping you'd come back. Still believing that the man I loved wouldn't actually let me suffer like that. So what? Julian's desperation was morphing into cruelty, the last defense of a man with nothing left to lose. You had a bad few weeks. Welcome to adulthood. Not everyone gets a fairy tale ending. Some of us have to make hard choices. Hard choices. Gwen's laugh was hollow. Is that what you call it? She looked at Jaime. He was vibrating with barely contained violence, his eyes black with rage, his jaw so tight she could see the muscle jumping. She touched his face, brought his forehead down to hers. I need to tell them, she whispered in Italian. I need to say it out loud. Tesoro, you don't have to. I do. She kissed him gently, drew strength from the contact. I need to. When she turned back to Julian, she was steady, resolved. You want to know about consequences? About hard choices? Let me tell you about February 3rd. 8 weeks and 2 days pregnant. I woke up in the shelter at 4 a.m. because something felt wrong. I was bleeding, cramping, terrified. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth. Several women in the crowd had tears in their eyes. I didn't have money for a cab, Gwen continued, her voice eerily calm. So I walked to Bellevue, 14 blocks in a snowstorm. By the time I got there, I was hemorrhaging. The ER doctor asked who they should call, who my emergency contact was. And I gave them your number, Julian. Even after everything, I gave them your number. Julian's face had gone gray. Gwen, don't. You didn't answer. Her voice never wavered. They called you 6 times, left messages, told you I was in the hospital, that there was a complication with the pregnancy, that they needed someone to make medical decisions because I was barely conscious. She paused, let him see the devastation he'd caused. You didn't come. You didn't call back. You let me go through that alone. I didn't know it was that serious. The voicemail said, I was hemorrhaging. Her composure finally cracked, the raw pain bleeding through. It said I might die, Julian. And you still didn't come. The crowd's sympathy had fully shifted now. Gwen could feel it, the collective horror and rage directed at Julian. But she didn't need their sympathy. She just needed him to hear it, to finally understand what he'd done. I lost the baby that night, she said quietly, alone in a hospital room, surrounded by strangers, grieving a future that would never exist. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that I still made excuses for you. I told myself you didn't know, that you would have come if you'd understood, that somewhere, the man I loved still existed. She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face, but her voice remained steady. Jaime moved to her side, his arm around her waist, letting her lean on him without taking over her moment. It took me 2 years to realize the truth, Gwen continued. You did know. You knew exactly how bad it was. You just didn't care. And that's unforgivable. Julian tried to speak, but his father's voice cut him off. Is this true? Smith Thorne Sr. stepped forward, his face carved from granite. You let a woman miscarry alone because you were too much of a coward to answer your phone? Dad, it wasn't like that. Was she in the hospital or not? Julian's silence was answer enough. Smith looked at his son like he was seeing him for the first time, seeing past the polished exterior to the rot underneath. You disgust me. Dad, don't. The old man's voice was flat, final. I've defended you for years, made excuses, blamed your failures on youth, on ambition, on the pressure I put on you to succeed. But this, he gestured to Gwen, this is who you really are, a coward and a thief. He turned to Jaime. I assume you have documentation of my son's business indiscretions? Jamie's smile was sharp. Extensive documentation, including proof that he's been embezzling from the family trust to cover his firm's losses. Smith didn't even flinch. How much? 3 million, give or take. The old man nodded slowly. I'll wire the money to an account of your choosing by Monday. Consider it restitution for what he stole from Mrs. Leone. He looked at his son one last time. You're on your own, Julian. I won't clean up this mess. Not this time. You're disowning me? Julian's voice was small, childlike. Over her? No, Smith said coldly. Over who you are. The woman is just the evidence. He walked away, didn't look back, and Gwen watched something fundamental break in Julian's eyes. This is your fault, Julian screamed at her, all pretense of civilization gone. You did this. You destroyed my life. No, Jaime said quietly, and there was something in his voice that made everyone freeze. You destroyed your own life, Julian. My wife simply held up a mirror. He moved then, faster than Gwen had ever seen him move outside of actual combat. One moment he was beside her. The next his hand was around Julian's throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. You let her starve, Jamie said conversationally, like he was discussing the weather. You let her bleed alone in a hospital. You killed my wife's child through your negligence and your cruelty. His grip tightened. Julian's face turned red, then purple. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right here. Jaime. Gwen's voice cut through the violence. He's not worth it. He hurt you, Tessero. He killed our child. He killed his child, she corrected gently. And he's going to live with that. But if you kill him, you go to prison. And I need you here, with me. It was the only argument that could have worked. Jamie's hand loosened, dropped. Julian collapsed to the floor, gasping, tears streaming down his face. You're lucky she has more mercy than I do, Jaime said. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, wiped his hand like he'd touched something contaminated. Marco, remove him. Two soldatos grabbed Julian's arms, hauled him to his feet. He was crying openly now, all dignity abandoned. Isabella, please. But his fiancé had already turned away. She approached Gwen instead, her face pale but determined. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't know. If I had known, you know now, Gwen said, not unkindly. That's what matters. Isabella nodded. Then, to everyone's shock, she pulled out her phone. I recorded something. Earlier tonight, in the green room. I was going to delete it, but she offered the phone to Gwen. I think you should hear it. Gwen took the phone, pressed play. Julian's voice, recorded barely an hour ago, filled the corridor. Doesn't matter what the prenup says. Once we're married, I'll find a way around it. Her father's not going to let his precious daughter divorce a thorn. We'll bleed them dry and... Another voice, male, laughing. You're a cold bastard. Julian again. I learned from the best. Gwen taught me that women are easy to manipulate if you know which buttons to push. Love, fear, guilt, they're all tools. Isabella's the same, just a different kind of stupid, but still a cash cow I can milk. The recording ended. Isabella was crying now, quiet tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. I was going to marry him, she whispered. I actually thought he loved me. He doesn't love anyone, Gwen said softly. Not even himself. That's why he destroys people. Because he's already destroyed inside. Isabella looked at Julian, still held between Jamie's men, and something hardened in her expression. I'm pressing charges for fraud. The engagement ring, the gifts, the investments he convinced me to make in his company, all of it was under false pretenses. My lawyers will be in touch. Julian made a broken sound. You can't. I can, Isabella said coldly. And I will. Welcome to consequences, Julian. I hope they choke you. She left. Walked away with her head high and her future reclaimed. Gwen looked at the man who'd once held her entire world in his hands. He was nothing now. Less than nothing. A cautionary tale in an expensive suit. Take him to the construction site, she told Marco. I think it's time Mr. Thorne contributed something permanent to the tower he claims to have designed. The construction site at midnight was a different world from the glittering ballroom. Harsh LED work lights cut through the darkness, illuminating half-finished floors and skeletal steel beams reaching toward the sky like broken fingers. The air smelled of wet concrete, metal, and cold city rain. Julian stumbled as Marco's men pushed him forward, his polished shoes slipping on mud and gravel. His tuxedo was ruined, torn, stained, the bow tie hanging loose around his neck like a noose waiting to tighten. He looked up at the tower he'd claimed to build, and for the first time, seemed to truly see it, not as a monument to his genius, but as stolen goods, evidence of his crime. "Please," he whispered as Jaime's car pulled up behind them. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll disappear. You'll shut up," Marco said mildly. "Or I'll make you shut up. Your choice." Jamie stepped out of the Mercedes, his suit jacket discarded, his white shirt rolled up at the sleeves. He looked like violence personified, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Gwen emerged from the passenger side, her gold dress protected by one of Jaime's long coats, her heels traded for construction boots that one of the soldados had produced from somewhere. She looked at the tower, at the building that should have been her masterpiece, her legacy, her gift to the city she loved. "It's taller than I expected. 73 floors," Jaime said, "and every single one built with your stolen designs." Julian made a small, desperate sound. "Gwen, please. You got what you wanted. Everyone knows the truth now. My father disowned me. Isabella's leaving me. The architecture community will never touch me again. What more do you want?" She turned to him slowly. "I want you to understand what you took from me. I get it. I stole your work. I destroyed your career. I'm sorry." "No," she said softly. "You don't get it. You don't understand the nights I spent in that shelter, feeling my baby die inside me cell by cell, knowing I couldn't stop it because I didn't have the resources to save him. You don't understand what it's like to lose everything, your career, your home, your child, your future, and have to rebuild from less than nothing." She moved closer, until she could see her reflection in his terrified eyes. "You took my son, Julian, and you didn't even care enough to ask his name." "Thomas," Julian whispered. You said his name was going to be Thomas, after my father, who died when I was 12, who told me I could be anything I wanted if I worked hard enough and never gave up." Her voice cracked. "I was going to make him proud. I was going to build something beautiful and name it after him and show the world that his daughter was exactly what he always believed she could be." Tears streamed down her face now. 5 years of grief and rage finally released. "And you stole that from me. You stole my father's legacy. You stole my son's chance at life. You stole my future." She was shaking, the words tearing out of her. "And you did it for money, for prestige, for an award that wasn't even yours to accept." Jaime was there, his arms around her, holding her together while she broke apart. "Breathe, Bella, breathe." She did. Drew in the cold night air, the smell of him, the steady certainty of his presence. When she could speak again, her voice was steady. "I'm not going to kill you, Julian. That would be mercy. Instead, you're going to help us build something." Julian followed her gaze to the construction pit, to the fresh concrete foundation where the commemorative plaque would be installed. The plaque that was supposed to read Thorn Tower, designed by Julian Thorn, AIA. Marco's men were already there, setting up work lights, unrolling the bronze plaque from its protective covering, except the inscription had changed. Thorn Tower, designed by Gwen Leone, AIA, expanded 2025, Phoenix architecture. "No," Julian breathed. "No, you can't." "I can," Gwen said. "This is my building, Julian. It always was. And you're going to cement that truth into its foundation. I won't do it. You can't make me." Jaime's gun pressed against the back of Julian's skull, the click of the safety disengaging loud in the quiet construction site. "We absolutely can make you." Julian's legs gave out. He fell to his knees in the mud, sobbing. "Please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "You're sorry you got caught," Gwen corrected. "You're sorry you're facing consequences. But you're not sorry for what you did to me. If you'd gotten away with it, if no one had ever found out, you'd still be accepting awards and giving interviews and living your perfect life built on my stolen work." She crouched down, her face level with his. "So no, Julian. I don't accept your apology. and I don't forgive you. Instead, you're going to pick up that trowel," she pointed to the tool Marco held, "and you're going to smooth the concrete over that plaque. You're going to seal your own failure into the building you stole. And every time you walk past this tower for the rest of your miserable life, you're going to remember that you didn't build it. I did." Julian looked at Jaime, at the gun still pressed against his head, at the soldados surrounding them with expressions that promised extreme violence if he didn't comply. Then he looked at Gwen, at the woman he'd underestimated so catastrophically. "I hate you," he whispered. "Good," she said simply. "Hate me. Spend the rest of your life hating me. It won't change the facts. It won't rebuild your reputation. It won't bring back your father's love or Isabella's trust or the career you destroyed through your own arrogance." She stood, stepped back. "Now get up. You have work to do." It took him 3 tries to stand. Marco handed him the trowel like it was a death sentence. Julian's hands shook so badly he could barely grip it. The concrete was still wet, still workable. The plaque sat in its metal frame, waiting to be sealed into the foundation forever. Julian looked at it, at his name erased and replaced by Gwen's, and something in him seemed to snap. "You were nothing when I met you," he said, his voice flat, dead. "A scholarship student from Brooklyn with big dreams and no connections. I made you relevant. I introduced you to the right people. I taught you how to navigate this industry. Everything you have now, you owe to me." "Everything she has now," Jaime said quietly. "She built herself. After you tried to destroy her, the only thing she owes you is contempt." Julian laughed, bitter and broken. "You think you've won? You think this ends with me humiliated and her triumphant? She'll never escape what I did to her. Every time someone looks at this building, they'll remember the scandal. They'll remember that she had to fight for credit on her own work. They'll wonder what else she's lied about." "Let them wonder," Gwen said. "I have the truth. I have the patents, the blueprints, the emails. I have a husband who would burn the city to protect me, and an empire built on merit, not theft. What do you have, Julian?" His face crumpled. "Nothing. I have nothing." "Then, get to work." It took him 20 minutes to smooth the concrete over the plaque. 20 minutes of watching him memorialize his own defeat, his hands shaking, tears mixing with sweat and rain. When he finished, the plaque was sealed, permanent, unchangeable. Gwen Leone's name would be there until the building fell, maybe longer. "It's done," Julian whispered. "Not quite." Jaime gestured to Marco. "We have one more piece of business." Marco produced a document. "This is a full confession. Theft of intellectual property, fraud, perjury in the plagiarism, report you filed, embezzlement from the family trust. Sign it. And if I don't? Then we move from criminal charges to something more permanent." Jaime's smile was terrifying. "I gave my wife a choice. She chose mercy. But my patience has limits. Julian, sign the paper or I put you in the foundation next to the plaque." Julian signed. His signature was barely legible, broken like everything else about him. "Good," Gwen said. "Now you can go." Julian stared at her. "Go? Go where?" "Wherever you want. I don't care." She turned away from him, looked up at her tower instead. "You're not worth any more of my time. You're just letting me leave? What else do you want from me?" She glanced back at him, and her expression was almost pitying. "You've lost everything that matters. Your career, your family, your reputation, your freedom. The confession you just signed guarantees jail time for the embezzlement at minimum. I don't need revenge, Julian. Life is going to punish you far more effectively than I ever could." He stood there, covered in mud and concrete, his life in ruins around him, and seemed to finally understand. This wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. About reclaiming what he'd stolen and making sure he could never steal again. "I really did love you," he said quietly. "In the beginning, before everything got complicated." "No," Gwen said. "You loved what I could do for you. You loved my talent, my designs, my willingness to make you look brilliant. But you never loved me, because if you had, you couldn't have destroyed me so easily." She walked to Jamie, Let him wrap her in his arms, in his coat, in the safety he represented. Take me home. With pleasure, Tesoro. They left Julian standing in the construction site, surrounded by the tower he'd built on lies, staring at the plaque that told the truth he'd tried so hard to bury. Marco and his men stayed behind, ensuring Julian understood that attempting to damage the plaque would be the last mistake he ever made. In the car, Gwen finally let herself collapse. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the confrontation drained away, leaving her hollow and exhausted. Jamie pulled her into his lap, cradled her like something precious, let her cry into his shirt. "It's over," he murmured, his hand stroking her hair. "Tesoro, it's over. You won. Then why doesn't it feel like winning?" Her voice was muffled against his chest. "Because justice isn't the same as healing." He tilted her face up, thumbed away her tears. "Tonight was about truth. Tomorrow we start on healing. How?" "How?" His smile was soft, tender in a way that still surprised her even after 3 years of marriage. "I have a plan. Trust me?" She did, with everything she had, always. The boardroom of Thorn architecture was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, a table carved from a single piece of mahogany, chairs that cost more than some people's cars, awards lining the walls, each one a testament to Julian's supposed genius. Julian burst through the doors at 8 a.m., his face haggard from a sleepless night, his suit rumpled. He'd come straight from his apartment, hadn't showered, barely registered the strange cars in the executive parking level. All he could think about was damage control. The board meeting he'd called for 9 a.m., the emergency PR strategy, the lawyers who could maybe spin this disaster into something salvageable. He stopped dead in the doorway. Gwen sat at the head of the table. His seat, the chairman's seat. She'd changed from the gold dress into a black power suit that made her look like exactly what she was, the woman who owned him. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, diamond studs in her ears, wedding ring catching the morning light. Jaime stood behind her, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. The board members, 5 men and 2 women who'd been loyal to the Thorn family for decades, sat in their usual places. But their expressions were different. Wary, guilty, afraid. "What?" Julian's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. "What is this?" "A board meeting," Gwen said pleasantly. "The one you called. We're just getting started early. This is my company. Actually," Marco said from the corner where he leaned against the wall like casual violence. "It's not. Not anymore." Gwen gestured to the chair opposite her. "Sit down, Julian. We have a lot to discuss." He didn't want to sit. Wanted to scream, to demand answers, to call his lawyers. But Jamie's expression promised consequences if he didn't comply. So Julian sat. Felt like a child being called to the principal's office. 6 months ago, Gwen began, her voice steady and professional. Leone Holdings began purchasing shares in Thorn Architecture, quietly, through shell companies and private sales. Your board, she gestured to the silent men and women around the table, was very helpful in facilitating these transactions. Julian's head whipped toward them. You sold to him? You sold my father's company? They sold their shares, Gwen corrected, as was their legal right. And now, she slid a document across the polished mahogany. I own 51% of this company, controlling interest. The paper might as well have been his death certificate. Julian stared at the numbers, the signatures, the official seal that made it all horribly, irreversibly real. No, his voice was small. No, this can't be legal. There are protections, anti-takeover provisions, which your father implemented, one of the board members said. An older woman named Margaret who'd known Julian since he was a child, and which can be waived by majority vote of the board. We voted in an emergency session this morning. Unanimously. You betrayed me. Julian looked around the table, at faces that refused to meet his eyes. All of you? My father built this company from nothing, and you just sold it? Your father built this company on integrity, Margaret said quietly. Something you clearly don't possess. When Mrs. Leone presented us with evidence of your fraud, your theft, your embezzlement. We had a choice: protect you and go down with you, or salvage what we could of this firm's reputation. Evidence you provided, Julian spat at Jamie. Evidence you manufactured. Evidence I collected, Jaime corrected. There's a difference. Every document is genuine. Every recording is authentic. You destroyed yourself, Julian. I just documented it. Gwen pulled out another folder. This one was thicker, bound in red, ominous. This is your termination notice. Effective immediately. You're fired. You can't fire me. I can. I did. The board has already voted to accept it. She opened the folder, revealing page after page of legal documentation. You're being terminated for cause. Fraud, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, which means no severance, no equity payout, no continuation of benefits. You leave with exactly what you came with. Nothing. I built this company. No. Her voice was steel. You stole from it. There's a difference. She slid another document across the table. This is a lifetime ban from the American Institute of Architects. Based on the confession you signed last night and the evidence of plagiarism, you'll never work as a licensed architect again. Julian's hands shook as he picked it up. Read the words that ended his career. This will destroy me. Yes, Gwen agreed simply. It will. Why? The word came out broken. Why not just take the company? Why destroy everything? She leaned forward, her eyes hard. Because you need to understand what you did to me. 5 years ago, you didn't just leave. You systematically destroyed every avenue I had for survival. You took my designs, my savings, my professional reputation. You left me with nothing and nowhere to go. So yes, Julian, I'm doing the same to you, and I want you to feel exactly what I felt. I'll sue. I'll fight this. With what money? Jaime asked mildly. Your father cut you off. Your bank accounts are frozen pending investigation of the embezzlement. Your apartment is being foreclosed on because you leveraged it to cover company losses. You have approximately $3,000 in your checking account and a credit card that's maxed out. Julian's face went from pale to gray. How do you... I know everything about you, Julian. Where you bank, where you drink, the name of the woman you've been seeing behind Isabella's back, the gambling debt you owe to men who don't accept credit cards. Jamie's smile was terrifying. I've spent 5 years learning everything there is to know about you. And now I'm going to use that information to make sure you never hurt anyone again. This is revenge. This is justice, Gwen corrected. Revenge would be burying you in the foundation of that tower. This, she gestured to the termination papers, the ban from the AIA, the evidence of his crimes. This is just consequences. Finally catching up to you, she stood. Jaime's hand immediately found the small of her back, steadying, supporting. The company is being renamed effective immediately. Phoenix Architecture, rising from the ashes of your corruption to build something better. You're taking my family's name? Your family disowned you, remember? She gestured to Margaret. Your father signed over his shares this morning. He wants nothing to do with you or the company you poisoned. Phoenix Architecture will continue to operate. We'll honor existing contracts. We'll employ everyone in this building who wasn't complicit in your fraud. But you... She looked at him with something like pity. You're done. Julian surged to his feet, the chair clattering backward. I won't let you do this. Marco moved. Fast. Had Julian's arm twisted behind his back before he could take 2 steps toward Gwen. Sit. Down. Let him go, Gwen said quietly. He's not a threat. Marco released him, though he stayed close. Julian stumbled back into his chair, tears streaming down his face. You were right about one thing, Gwen said. I was nothing when you met me. A scholarship student with more dreams than money. But I was also brilliant, talented, innovative. Everything I needed to succeed was already inside me. All I needed was someone to believe in it. She glanced at Jamie, love and gratitude in her eyes. He believed in me, gave me the resources to rebuild. But the work, the designs, the vision, the success, That was all mine. It always was. She picked up one final folder. This contains the deed to the Thorn Tower and all its associated holdings. As of this morning, they belong to Phoenix Architecture, which means they belong to me. Julian made a sound like he'd been gut-punched. I'm not taking your father's legacy, Gwen continued. I'm reclaiming mine. The tower will be renamed Phoenix Tower. The systems will be updated to my original specifications, fixing the mistakes you made during construction. And the revenue from it will fund a scholarship program for architecture students from low-income backgrounds. Students like I was. Students who deserve a chance to succeed without being exploited by men like you. She gathered her papers, prepared to leave. Security will escort you out of the building. You have 30 minutes to clear your personal effects. Anything you leave behind will be donated to charity. Where am I supposed to go? Julian's voice was barely a whisper. What am I supposed to do? Gwen paused at the door, looked back at the man who'd destroyed her life, and expected her to disappear quietly. I don't know, Julian, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. After all, her smile was sharp. Welcome to adulthood. Not everyone gets a fairy tale ending. Sometimes you just have to face the consequences of your choices. She left him there. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. Marco's men were already moving in, ready to escort Julian out of the building he'd thought he owned. In the elevator, Gwen finally let herself breathe. Let the reality of what she'd just done settle over her. She'd taken everything from him. Stripped him of power, prestige, purpose, made him feel exactly what she'd felt 5 years ago. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt hollow. Second thoughts? Jaime asked quietly, reading her like he always did. No, he earned this. She searched for the words. I thought it would feel different. Bigger. Like some fundamental part of me would shift when I finally got justice. Justice is necessary, he said, pulling her close. But it's not healing. It doesn't fix what he broke. It just stops him from breaking anyone else. Then what does fix it? His smile was soft, knowing. That's what tomorrow is for, Tessero. Today was about closing the past. Tomorrow we start building the future. The elevator doors opened. Sunlight streamed through the lobby windows, warming her face. Gwen stepped out into it, into the light, into the future she'd fought so hard to claim. Behind them, security escorted Julian through the same lobby, carrying a small cardboard box with his personal effects. He looked small, broken, nothing like the confident man who'd once held her entire world in his hands. Their eyes met across the marble floor. For a moment, Gwen saw the ghost of who they'd been. Young, in love, full of dreams that felt possible. Then the moment passed. Julian looked away first, and Gwen walked out of the building, her building with her head high and her future bright. 1 week later, Gwen stood in front of the Phoenix Architecture conference room, looking at the team she'd assembled. 23 employees who'd chosen to stay after the takeover. 23 people willing to bet their careers on her vision instead of Julian's legacy. She'd spent the week in meetings, with clients, with the press, with the AIA board reviewing her ethics complaint against Julian. She'd given interviews, signed contracts, reviewed designs. She'd barely slept, sustained by espresso and Jaime's steady presence. But this meeting was different. This was where she officially became CEO, where she laid out her vision for what Phoenix Architecture would become. Most of you knew Julian for years, she began, her voice steady and clear. You worked under him, trusted him, believed in the company he'd built. And finding out that he'd stolen the work that made this firm successful, I know that's a betrayal. Not just of me, but of all of you. Heads nodded around the table. Margaret especially looked stricken, her loyalty to Julian's father warring with her disgust at Julian's actions. I'm not here to trash Julian, Gwen continued. His actions speak for themselves. I'm here to tell you what comes next, who Phoenix Architecture is going to be under my leadership. She clicked to the first slide in her presentation, a blueprint, not of a building but of a philosophy. We're going to build differently, she said. Sustainably, ethically, with attention to the communities our buildings impact. We're not just creating structures. We're creating environments where people live, work, grow. That means designing with purpose, with integrity, with the understanding that every choice we make has consequences. She clicked through slides showing her proposed projects. Affordable housing with cutting-edge sustainable systems. A community center in the Bronx that would double as an emergency shelter. A school in Queens with solar panels and rainwater collection built into the design. These aren't the projects that win awards, she admitted. They're not the prestige developments that make headlines, but they're the projects that matter, the ones that change lives. A younger architect, Michael, fresh out of Columbia, raised his hand tentatively. What about commercial work? The high-rises and corporate headquarters that pay the bills? We'll still take those projects, Gwen said, but we'll approach them differently. Every commercial building will include sustainable features, even if it costs more up front. We'll refuse projects that gentrify neighborhoods without giving back to the community, and we'll be transparent about our design process, our costs, our impact. No more cutting corners. No more prioritizing profit over people. That's going to make us less competitive, Margaret said quietly. Other firms can undercut us if we're adding costs for sustainability. Let them, Gwen said. I'm not interested in being the cheapest. I'm interested in being the best, in building legacy projects that my children and grandchildren will point to with pride, in creating a firm where architects can do their best work without compromising their ethics. She paused. Let that sink in. I know that's idealistic. I know it's hard. But I spent 5 years rebuilding my life from nothing because I refused to compromise my principles. I'm not about to start now. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Margaret spoke, her voice thick with emotion. Your father would be proud. Gwen's throat tightened. Thank you. When do we start? Michael asked, leaning forward eagerly. Now, Gwen smiled. We start now. Margaret, I'm promoting you to COO. Michael, your lead on the Bronx Community Center. Everyone else, she distributed folders around the table, has an assignment. We have 6 months to prove that Phoenix can fly. Let's get to work. The meeting dissolved into excited chatter. Plans forming, partnerships building, the energy of creation filling the room. Gwen watched it all, feeling something unlock in her chest. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not revenge, not even justice, but the chance to build something meaningful, something real. Jaime found her an hour later, still in the conference room, surrounded by blueprints and coffee cups. He didn't say anything, just pulled her into his arms, let her rest against his chest. How does it feel? He asked quietly. Being the CEO? Terrifying, she admitted. What if I fail? What if Julian was right and I'm not ready for this? Then you'll learn. You'll adapt. You'll become ready. He tilted her face up, his eyes intense. You've already survived the worst thing Julian could do to you. Running a company is nothing compared to surviving what you survived. When did you get so wise? I married you, didn't I? His smile was teasing, tender. That was the wisest thing I ever did. She kissed him, slow and deep, tasting coffee and the promise of future mornings like this. When they broke apart, she was breathless. Take me home, she murmured. I need to not be the CEO for a few hours. With pleasure, Mrs. Leone. The penthouse was quiet when they arrived. The city noise muted by triple-paned windows and the kind of wealth that bought silence. Jaime's hand never left the small of Gwen's back as they rode the private elevator up, his thumb tracing small circles through the fabric of her blouse. She was exhausted. Bone-deep, soul-tired exhaustion that came from confronting your demons and winning but losing pieces of yourself in the process. The adrenaline that had carried her through the week was gone, leaving only the reality of what she'd done, what it had cost. Bath first, Jamie said, guiding her toward their bathroom. Then food, then sleep. I'm fine. She protested weakly. You're trembling. He touched her face, gentle. And you haven't eaten anything but coffee since breakfast. Humor me, Tesoro. She didn't have the energy to argue. Let him unzip her dress, help her step out of her heels, guide her to sit on the edge of their massive marble tub while he ran the water. He added oils that smelled of lavender and something darker, earthier. Steam rose, misting the mirrors. When he reached for the clasp of her bra, she caught his hand. "Stay with me?" Something shifted in his expression, softened. "Always." He stripped efficiently, muscles moving under tattoos that told the story of his life in ink and scars. The crown on his chest, the names of his brothers on his ribs, the Leone family crest over his heart. And on his left shoulder, added just after their wedding, a phoenix rising from flames. Her. He helped her into the water, then climbed in behind her, pulling her back against his chest. The heat sank into her muscles, loosening the tension she'd been carrying for days, for years. For the entire 5 years since Julian had destroyed her life. "I'm scared," she whispered into the steam. His arms tightened around her. "Of what?" "That I'm becoming like him, like Julian, taking what I want without caring who it hurts. Tesoro." Jaime's voice was firm, grounding. "Julian stole from you and felt entitled to it. You took back what was yours. That's not the same thing. I destroyed his life. He destroyed his own life. You just held him accountable." She turned in his arms, water sloshing, until she could see his face. "Did you ever doubt this? Us? What we're building together?" "Every day," he admitted. His hands cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "I'm a criminal, Bella. I've done terrible things, hurt people, taken lives. And you're brilliant and beautiful, and you could have anyone. Someone clean, someone safe, someone who wouldn't drag you into the darkness." "I don't want clean," she said fiercely. "I don't want safe. I want you. The man who found me broken and didn't try to fix me, just gave me the tools to fix myself. The man who's terrifying to everyone except me. The man who looks at me like I'm the most dangerous thing in any room and loves me more for it." He kissed her. Slow and deep and devastating, tasting of heat and need and 5 years of building something unbreakable together. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, their breath mingling in the steam. "I love you," he murmured in Italian. "My phoenix, my queen, my everything. Show me," she whispered back. His eyes darkened, understanding. This wasn't about sex. It was about reclaiming her body, her worth, her right to intimacy without fear or pain or the memory of Julian's casual cruelty. It was about being seen, truly seen, by someone who loved every broken piece of her. He lifted her from the water, wrapped her in towels soft as clouds, carried her to their bedroom. The city glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, but she only had eyes for him, for the way he looked at her like she was art, like she was precious, like she was his. "If you need me to stop, I won't," she interrupted. "I trust you, Jamie. Completely." He laid her on their bed, the silk sheets cool against her warm skin. Started at her feet, pressing kisses to her ankles, her calves, the sensitive skin behind her knees. His hands were reverent, worshipful, tracing the curves and valleys of her body like he was memorizing scripture. When he reached the bruise on her hip, faded now to yellow and green, but still visible where Julian's shoe had connected, he paused. His jaw clenched, violence simmering beneath his control. "He hurt you," Jaime said quietly. "In my city, at an event I planned, he put his hands on you, and I wasn't fast enough to stop it." "You stopped everything that mattered," Gwen said, threading her fingers through his hair. "You stopped him from ever hurting anyone again. That's enough." He pressed his lips to the bruise, gentle, claiming, "I should have killed him. Then you'd be in prison and I'd be alone. This is better." She tugged him up, until he was hovering over her, his weight braced on his forearms. "We're together. We won. And he's nothing but a memory I'm choosing to let go of. Can you let go?" She thought about it, about the girl she'd been, desperate and pregnant and alone, about the woman she'd become, powerful and loved and unbreakable. "I think so. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, because holding on to that pain, it gives him power he doesn't deserve." Jaime's kiss was different this time, deeper, more desperate, like he was trying to pour everything he felt into the contact of lips and tongue and breath. She opened to him, welcomed him, let him chase away the ghosts that had haunted her for too long. Their lovemaking was slow, intense, a conversation in touch and breath and wordless promises. He treated her like porcelain and steel in equal measure, like she was fragile and unbreakable, like she was the most important thing in his world. Because she was. He'd told her once that he'd burn the city for her, and she'd believed him, still believed him. When they finally collapsed together, tangled and spent and trembling, she felt something shift inside her, the last piece of her that Julian had broken, the part that questioned if she was worthy of love, of tenderness, of being treated like she mattered, finally healed. "I'm going to tell you something," Jaime said into the darkness, his voice rough. "And you're going to think I'm insane. Tell me anyway. When I first saw you, 3 years ago, you were mopping floors in my building. Your uniform was 2 sizes too big. Your hair was pulled back in a bun. You looked exhausted and lost and absolutely terrified." His arm tightened around her. "And I thought, that's the woman I'm going to marry." Gwen laughed, surprised. "You thought that, really?" "I did. You had this fire in your eyes. Even broken, even destroyed, you hadn't given up. You were still fighting, still surviving. And I knew you were going to be extraordinary if someone just gave you the chance. So you gave me a chance. I gave you a job. You did the rest. The designs, the reputation, the success that was all you. Tesoro. All I did was make sure no one could hurt you while you rebuilt yourself." She turned in his arms, studying his face in the dim light. "Why? Why me? You could have anyone. Because you're the only person who's ever looked at me and seen a man instead of a monster." His hand cupped her face, reverent. "Everyone else sees the Don. The criminal. The killer. You see Jaime, just Jaime, and you love him anyway." "I love him because of who he is, not despite it." She kissed him softly. "You're not a monster, Jamie. You're my protector, my partner, my home." He made a sound low in his throat, pulling her impossibly closer. They lay there in the darkness, wrapped in each other in silk sheets, and the peace that came from being completely, utterly known. "What happens now?" Gwen asked eventually. "We've destroyed Julian, taken back the company, proved the truth. What's next?" Jaime's smile was mysterious. "That's a surprise. I hate surprises. You'll love this one." He kissed her forehead. "Sleep, Bella. Tomorrow we start the next chapter." She wanted to argue, to demand answers, but exhaustion was pulling her under like a tide. She let it, safe in Jamie's arms, knowing that whatever came next, they'd face it together. 3 months later, Gwen stood on a terrace in Sicily, looking out over the Mediterranean. The water was impossibly blue, the kind of blue that didn't exist in New York, that she'd thought only existed in paintings or heavily filtered Instagram posts. But it was real. All of this was real. The villa belonged to Jamie's family, his mother's side, the respectable Italians who pretended not to know how their American relatives made their money. It was ancient stone and modern luxury merged seamlessly, bougainvillea climbing the walls, olive trees older than the country she'd left behind. They'd been here for a week. A vacation, Jamie had called it, though Gwen suspected he had ulterior motives. He'd been different since they'd arrived. Softer, more present, like he'd finally let himself relax, let go of the constant vigilance that came with running an empire. She heard him before she saw him, his footsteps on the terracotta tiles. Then his arms were around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder, his body warm against her back. "You're up early," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her neck. "Couldn't sleep." She leaned back into him, let his strength support her. "Too much on my mind. Anything I can help with?" She almost said no, almost kept the secret a little longer, but they'd built their relationship on honesty, on truth even when it was hard, and she wouldn't start lying now. "I'm pregnant," she said quietly. His entire body went still. For a heartbeat, 2, he didn't breathe. Then his hands moved to her stomach, covering it protectively, possessively. "How long?" His voice was rough, emotional in a way she'd rarely heard. 6 weeks. I found out 3 days ago. I wanted to be sure before I told you. He turned her in his arms, his hands cupping her face, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that stole her breath. You're sure? The doctor confirmed. Yes. She covered his hands with hers. I'm pregnant, Jamie. We're going to have a baby. The sound he made was half laugh, half sob. He dropped to his knees right there on the terrace, his arms around her waist, his face pressed against her stomach. His shoulders shook, and she realized with shock that he was crying. Jamie. I thought, his voice broke. After what happened with Julian, after you lost, I thought maybe you couldn't, that he'd taken that from you too. Gwen's own tears started then, hot and healing. The doctor said there was no reason I couldn't have a healthy pregnancy. The miscarriage was from stress and malnutrition, not from any underlying problem. You're really pregnant. He looked up at her, his face wet with tears, his eyes blazing with joy and terror and overwhelming love. We're having a baby. We are. She sank down to her knees with him, cupping his face. Are you happy? I know we didn't plan this. We never talked about. He kissed her, cutting off her spiraling doubts. I'm terrified, he admitted when he pulled back. I'm going to be a father. Me, the man who's killed people, who's built an empire on violence and fear. How am I supposed to raise a child? The same way you loved me, she said firmly. With everything you have. With protection and patience and that fierce loyalty. You showed me every day for 3 years before I even let myself believe in it. You're going to be an amazing father, Jaime. I know it. His hands trembled as they covered her still flat stomach. It's so small. How is something so small even possible? That's how babies work. She laughed, the sound light with relief and joy. They start small and get bigger. I'm buying the best doctors, the best hospital. You're not giving birth anywhere but the finest facility in Jaime. She stopped him gently. I'm healthy. The baby's healthy. We don't need the best. We just need safe. You're getting the best anyway. His expression was stubborn, protective. Both of you. I'm not taking chances. She knew better than to argue. This was how he loved, with excess and obsession, with the need to control every variable to keep her safe. She'd learned to accept it, to let him care for her in the only way he knew how. Okay, she said. The best. But we're staying here for now. I like it here. It's peaceful. We'll stay as long as you want. He pulled her close, careful now, like she was made of glass. Do you want to know? Boy or girl? It's too early to tell, but, she paused, uncertain. I've been thinking about names. If it's a boy, I'd like to name him Thomas. After my father, and after the baby I lost. Jaime's arms tightened. And if it's a girl, Elena, after your mother. His breath caught. She'd love that. She'd be so. His voice broke again. Fuck, I wish she could meet you. Could see how happy you make me. Tell me about her. Gwen settled more comfortably against him, the terracotta warm under them, the Mediterranean breeze carrying the scent of salt and flowers. What was she like? And he did. Told her stories about the woman who'd raised him in Sicily before the family moved to New York. About her strength, her kindness, her fierce protection of her children, about how she'd tried to keep them out of the family business and eventually accepted that some things were in the blood. They sat there for hours, talking about family and future and the child growing inside her, making plans, dreaming dreams that felt possible for the first time in her life. Eventually, Jaime stood, pulling her up with him. I have something to show you. He led her through the villa to his study, a room she hadn't spent much time in. The walls were lined with books and family photographs, generations of Leones looking stern and proud. But he ignored all of that, going straight to the desk. He opened a drawer, pulled out a tablet, turned it to face her. The screen showed surveillance footage. Julian Thorne, looking older than 3 months should have made him, wearing a sanitation worker's uniform, emptying trash cans on a street corner in Jersey City. He's working for the city, Jaime said quietly. Sanitation department. It's the only job I allowed him to get. The confession he signed included an agreement that any future employment would be cleared through my legal team, and I made sure the only thing he'd be approved for was manual labor. Gwen watched the man who'd stolen her future struggle with a garbage can. He looked diminished, broken. Nothing like the arrogant architect who'd once looked down on everyone around him. Do you want to see more? Jaime asked. I have updates every week. His apartment, it's in a bad neighborhood, barely better than the shelter you were in. His bank account less than $1,000. His prospects? Stop. She reached out, closed the tablet, ended the feed. I don't need to see any more. Are you sure? I can make it worse. I can… Jaime. She took his face in her hands, made him look at her. I don't care about Julian anymore. He's getting exactly what he deserves, and that's enough. I don't need to watch him suffer. I just need to live my life, build my company, raise our child, be happy. He searched her eyes, looking for doubt, for lingering pain. You've really let it go. I have. And she realized it was true. The anger, the need for revenge, the obsession with making Julian pay it had all burned away over the last 3 months, leaving only peace. He took 5 years of my life. I'm not giving him any more. Jaime's smile was proud, fierce. My phoenix, rising from the ashes and leaving the past behind. Our phoenix, she corrected, placing his hand on her stomach. All 3 of us, rising together. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, pouring everything he felt into the contact. When they broke apart, the tablet was forgotten. Julian was forgotten. Everything except the future they were building together. Marry me, he said suddenly. She laughed. We're already married. I know, but I want to do it again. Here, in Sicily. With my family, with your chosen family, with everyone who matters. I want to marry you when you're pregnant with our child, when you're happy, when you're whole. Not as the broken woman I found 3 years ago, but as the queen you've become. Tears pricked her eyes. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. Is that a yes? Yes. She kissed him, tasting salt and joy. Yes, I'll marry you again, as many times as you want. They planned the ceremony for a month later, a small intimate affair on the terrace overlooking the sea. Gwen wore white, simple and elegant, her stomach just starting to show the smallest curve. Jaime wore black, his family crest embroidered on his jacket, looking like the dangerous prince he was. Marco officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. Margaret flew in from New York, along with Michael and a few other Phoenix Architecture employees. Jaime's family filled the rest of the seats, cousins and uncles, and the respectable relatives who pretended not to know about the empire. The ceremony was in Italian and English both, words of love and loyalty and forever. When Jaime slipped the ring on her finger, a new one, diamonds and sapphires, designed specifically for this moment, Gwen felt the last piece of her past life fall away. She was no longer the girl Julian had destroyed, no longer defined by trauma and survival and the fight to rebuild. She was Gwen Leone, wife to a dangerous man who loved her desperately, CEO of a company building the future, mother-to-be to a child who would grow up knowing they were wanted, cherished, protected. She was whole. The reception lasted late into the night, wine and music and laughter echoing through the villa. Gwen danced with Jaime under the stars, his hand protective on her stomach, their foreheads pressed together. I love you, she murmured in Italian, the language she'd learned for him. My wolf, my protector, my home. I love you, he replied. My phoenix, my queen, my everything. And as they swayed together, the Mediterranean breeze carrying the scent of bougainvillea and new beginnings, Gwen finally understood what winning felt like. It wasn't about destroying Julian. It wasn't about reclaiming her stolen work or building an empire or proving she'd survived. It was about this moment, this man, this life she'd built from ashes and determination. It was about choosing joy over bitterness, love over hate, future over past. It was about being happy. Finally, impossibly, completely happy. From a homeless shelter to the queen of the Mafia, from broken to unbreakable, from victim to victor, Gwen's journey proved that sometimes you have to burn to rise, that the worst thing that ever happens to you can become the foundation for the best thing you ever build. And that vengeance, while sweet, is nothing compared to the victory of simply living well. 8 months later, on a cold December morning in New York, Gwen gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas Leone, and when Jaime held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face, Gwen knew that this family, this love, this impossible future they'd built together was worth every moment of pain she'd survived to get here. The Phoenix Tower opened the following spring, a monument to sustainable architecture and the triumph of truth over lies. And somewhere in Jersey City, Julian Thorne emptied trash cans and wondered how he'd lost everything. But Gwen didn't think about him anymore. Didn't need to. She'd taken back her life, her work, her future, and she'd left him behind in the ashes where he belonged.